Thank you all for attending. I'm Brian Verdine, Yellowdig's Head of Client Success. In my capacity at Yellowdig, I spend a lot of time doing research into the platform, talking with instructors and other people in university communities about how they're using Yellowdig, and try to make better recommendations to all of our professors and other users. So a lot of what I'll talk about today is observations that we've made in building the product and using it in a lot of different use cases. And I really do want to make sure that there's opportunities for you guys to jump in and ask questions. So there are a few Yellowdig employees on the channel, and they're manning the chat. Anybody that has questions as I'm talking, please feel free to drop those into that chat, and they'll either interrupt me to have me directly address the question, or they'll just answer it for you in that chat. I imagine Tyler Rohrbaugh, probably some of you might know his name or have interacted with him before, but he's our head of client partnerships. He's going to be probably jumping in a little bit here and there to color in some of the things I'm talking about, or just surface questions. You can kind of look out for him to be jumping in and out on video. Barring anything else, I guess I'm going to get started. Welcome again. Our vision at Yellowdig is really to think about community creation and how communities really build the social interactions and opportunities for learning that allow people to thrive, both in their institutions and in life. So really, Yellowdig's vision is all focused around community building, and our technology was really designed to encourage good back and forth interactions between people. And certainly in the current situation, that's something that's sort of top of mind for everybody, and we're hoping to be a major part of that solution. When we talk about communities, there's a lot of things that we talk to people about in terms of why they think learners need communities. And I've collected a lot of them into a slide just to give you an idea of the kinds of things people usually talk to us about, and the kinds of things that we're hoping our technology and some of our methods really help meet. So a lot of it has to do with exposure to cutting edge information, integrating knowledge, really connecting learning to the real world. We get asked a lot about how we can build sort of student satisfaction and retention, which is certainly more important now than ever. We definitely want our communities to inspire affinity for the university, build opportunities for students to network with one another. Even just making sure that students can find each other and make some friends is something that can help get through the frustration of classes, or sort of the whole entire college experience for some people. And really sort of building communication skills and knowledge, which are going to be really important in future careers. And all of these things are really encompassed in a good learning community. And these are really supported by actually having spaces where students will interact with one another. We think that really communities are important across the entire student life cycle, and a lot of people are using Yellowdig within courses, and we want students to be able to take those relationships and interactions that have formed within the course and take them into other areas of the university. We want the university to really be able to engage students from actually pre-enrollment into the formal learning space, and then all throughout the entire student life cycle, in spaces to truly replace a lot of the campus experience. Students need to be interacting both in their formal learning environment and in all of these other areas where there's real value in them being connected with each other, with mentors, and with university staff that are going to help them solve real problems that they're having. So if you're not at all familiar with Yellowdig, I do want to just give a quick snapshot of what it is. It's really a community building system. It was built with and for educators. Yellowdig has primarily been in the higher learning space. And so a lot of the product is actually, designed to meet the needs of universities and other learning institutions. The actual platform itself is a single scrolling feed design that you can see here on the right hand side. This is Yellowdig opened inside of a Canvas iframe, so it does integrate with learning management systems like Canvas, Blackboard, pretty much all of the standard LTI based systems. Um, it is a gamified platform, so it not only encourages students to come get their points for a grade, but it also is designed to change student behavior in a way that really encourages the development of communities. And we'll talk a lot about that, but it's a really important function of Yellowdig. And those points and are created, turned into a grade and passed back to the learning management system. But the true reason for that point system is to change student behavior. It is a secure, accessible platform, and in that way, it meets a lot of the needs of the university in terms of ADA compliance and making sure that our data is secure. We don't advertise, we don't sell student data. So the data that is acquired in Yellowdig is all owned by the universities that license with us. Just to give a flavor of how we think about Yellowdig comparing to other platforms that you may use or have heard of. Yellowdig is really an asynchronous, primarily asynchronous platform. And we think about it a lot for sort of filling in between synchronous class sessions on campus or Zoom sessions, when you're off campus, but really allowing students to continue those interactions, continue good conversations in between those synchronous sessions. Our platform is really designed and backed by efficacy research and by partnering with institutions in a really academic sense of the word. So our platform is definitely checking the box on being actually an effective educational tool. We do have meet all of the FERPA and compliance, accessibility compliance. What's the word, needs that you guys have. And we do also collect a lot of data for attendance and for tracking regular and substantive interaction, which are really important, becoming increasingly important for federal compliance. So I want to jump into a demo really quick. I'm going to talk a lot about sort of the main functions of the platform. And then later, I'm going to jump into how our data story kind of unfolds for Yellowdig and show you some of the interesting things that we've been building recently. Trying to find a window here. Here we go. So hopefully everybody is now seeing an open instance of Canvas. Yellowdig does work really well for individual courses. So here, we have Yellowdig in Business 101, and that's going to be, what I talk a lot about today as far as course-based use cases, because I believe most of the people on this webinar are, instructors. But just food for thought in terms of what Yellowdig can do. You can integrate Yellowdig into non-credit bearing communities for things like cohorts or alumni networks. And in fact, one thing about Yellowdig is that it can be signed into from something like Canvas or Blackboard, or we can do single sign-ons into the same organization from a different student portal or alumni portal. You can also log directly into Yellowdig app at any point to access Yellowdig Engage once you have an account. So there are a lot of different ways that you could use Yellowdig to access different types of communities around your campus. Before I jump into the demo, Tyler, has any questions come up that I should probably answer?
None thus far. You wanna let me turn my video on?
Oh, did I not do
For some
that?
reason, it's not letting me.
I think I have to make you a host.
Okay. Well, while you do that, there was one good question here. Hello, everybody. From Ashley. Ashley asks, is Yellowdig designed as a platform for adoption by universities and not individuals? So I think there's a couple of things in there that we might want to discuss. I'll take on anything relating to licensing and such, but do you want to start with how it's used by instructors versus institutions?
Yeah, so I mean, typically an instructor's experience is going to be going into a classroom or a class shell and integrating Yellowdig directly into their class, a link to Yellowdig directly into their class, which would look like this experience here. So basically, you get in, you design your class, you'd incorporate Yellowdig, which can be just added as a tool, assuming that your university has put it into the learning management system. And so you would just add it as a tool into the course shell, and then when students click into it, it will just launch into Yellowdig. If they don't have a previous account with us, it'll create an account on that launch, and they'll be taken directly to the community that was, associated with your course. So it's a really one-click access as in terms of the standard student experience and how an instructor would build it into their course. And typically, you can also include it into an assignment, which is how or is necessary in the case of Canvas to have the grading pass back work. But essentially, that's the experience of a student coming in, whether it's the first time or the 100th time that they've used Yellowdig inside of their course, and they'll just launch directly into Yellowdig and be able to start participating in the community. As far as how universities use it elsewhere, there are single sign-on opportunities, as I mentioned, for other types of integrations. We definitely see a lot of universities just creating sort of non-course bearing or non-credit bearing shells that you can create an instructor community, for example, and just invite your instructors into that class. So there's a lot of different ways that people have decided to use it. As far as the licensing, do you want to address that one, Tyler?
Yeah. So especially in light of the COVID outbreak, we understand that institutions that maybe had availability of funds to purchase something like Yellowdig for all of their faculty, well, this is a very tumultuous time. And, while we would typically recommend that we build a partnership directly with the college, the institution itself, or even the department, in some cases, depending on the size of your institution, we are directly supporting individual faculty. So, Ashley, we would not see students coming to Yellowdig and signing up for Yellowdig on their own, using Yellowdig on their own. There needs to be direction given, say, as it relates to a course that I'm taking, or perhaps Yellowdig is used in the virtual new student orientation. And that might be my initial introduction to the platform. So later in our session, we're going to talk more about the promotional offer that we are offering to anyone and everyone that's looking to use the platform right now. Brian, while I have the floor, there was a question as well about other LMS that Yellowdig supports, and whether or not we'd show other LMS integrations today. We will not be demonstrating Yellowdig outside of Canvas, simply in the interest of time, because there's so much that Brian wants to cover today. But Yellowdig is LMS agnostic. So we integrate with Blackboard, with Moodle, with Sakai, with edX, with D2L, the list goes on and on and on. And we also integrate with a variety of systems outside of the learning management system. As you can imagine, if Yellowdig is used, say, for alumni to engage with students, well, the alumni aren't going to have access to Blackboard or Canvas. They're going to need access in another way. So For anyone that maybe does not use Canvas, but is looking for a more contextual demonstration, either someone on my team or myself would be happy to walk you through that after the demo. And Brian, there was a question in the Q&A from Martha in regards to group functionality. And I don't know if you want to get to that now or later in the discussion, but I did want to surface that as well.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely be hitting on that. So,
Okay.
yeah, if I don't get to it, remind me. I just wanted to open this in a new tab to give everybody an idea of what Yellowdig looks like as its own website. So in reality, when people are using our system, this is what they're sort of being piped into, for lack of a better way of saying it. So even within, Canvas, the system is basically opening as a website within Canvas. And that's the way it works on just about every system. So, in Blackboard, it'll just be sort of wrapped in the Blackboard shell, right? But our actual website is going to look very similar to what you're seeing here. This is with Canvas sort of wrapped around it, just to give you some context on what you can expect in different LMS systems. It ends up just really looking sort of like our website embedded into those pages. And just one other note on sort of the free offer idea and whether individuals can take advantage of it. We definitely want to try to get this into your learning management system if it's at all possible, simply because you get a lot of advantages of just being able to easily log into log into Yellowdig without having to invite students. All you have to do is manage your course roster, and they're able to get in and out of Yellowdig. There's also a great passback system, so if you want to take any advantage of that, you have to be integrated into the learning management system. So we definitely highly recommend that, and that's something we'll want to try to do. But of course, different situations may require different things. Okay, so Yellowdig is designed around a single scrolling feed, and the idea is that there's one community per classroom. I think that's really vitally important. Students come to one place. New things that are happening and being talked about pop to the top. It keeps everything engaging. It makes it really simple for people to know like what they have to come and check out and do. And so we think that's a really important aspect of Yellowdig, and one of its strengths. One thing that people worry about in thinking about everything being in a single scrolling design with everything in one place is whether students are going to get kind of disoriented and lost. We definitely have topic tags to help with that. These are fully configurable. You can make them different colors. You can name them different things, make them align with your course in whatever way that you want. And these can be clicked and then filter the entire feed to just those topics. So your students will be able to drill down on a single topic. The other thing we've done is make a really robust search. It's full text search of the entire thing. You should be able to find any sort of keyword that you would need to. And we have a really robust filtering system where basically you can find posts by various different aspects of them. And each of these can be added on top of one another. So you would have the ability to find a post by a specific member of your community posted in a specific date range with a specific topic associated with it. And because those just add on top of each other, it becomes pretty easy to sort of drill down and find specific things that you might be looking for. Just to give you an idea of some of the post creation functionality, here you just would create a title for your post and start typing something interesting. And as you're typing, you can @mention other people, and this brings up the course roster when you add in the @mention. So I could @mention a student to get their attention. They'll receive a notification that I've sort of called them out in this post so that they'll come and look at it. I can also do hashtags, and these hashtags work similar in terms of filtering functionality as the topics. But these are sort of student driven. So students can create these as they want. Obviously instructors can as well. But these are sort of a bottom up approach to organizing content. People can create whatever hashtags they want on their own posts, things like that. And so that's an additional way of sort of organizing content. And I see somebody there misspelled hashtag. Those are some functionalities that are built into it. A new feature for this version of the platform, if you're familiar with Classic but haven't seen Engage, is we have the ability to record video directly into the feed now, which is a great way to introduce yourself, personalize things. I've heard of instructors using this to do online poster sessions for sort of end of the year presentations, and basically record their poster presentation right into the feed, and then they invited instructors in to talk about and sort of give feedback on those poster presentations. That happened at the end of last semester. One professor I know that did that and said it was really successful. So that's some of the functionality. You can add polls with different options. You can post videos, images. One of the interesting features I think for certain classes is the ability to draw, and of course you can draw anything you like, but there's also the ability to upload a background image. So if you wanted to annotate something, if you wanted to point something out on a diagram, or sort of explain a diagram to somebody and call attention to a couple of things, you have this drawing layer on top of a background image, which can be really handy. So those are a few things that you can do as far as posting is concerned. And this experience is really identical between instructors and students. So pretty much everything that you're seeing here is something that your students would be able to do, with the exception of pinning things to the top. So that's an admin only functionality. But basically you can choose to pin any post to the top of the feed and it will stay there. You can actually see that this post here with the blue outline is pinned to the top of this forum with this poll in it. And that just makes sure that every student, when they come into Yellowdig, will see that post. Some other functions here are emoji reactions for posts. You can see who made them, and how many reactions different posts have gotten. There's the ability to mark things as read, and obviously comment and reply on each other's posts and comments. One other bit of functionality is this Accolade system. So if you think a post is really good, or maybe is a verified response to a question that somebody asked, you can put these different badges on them and use them in really flexible ways. So each of these accolades is fully customizable. You can change the colors, put some different images on them. You can name them different things. So this verified response badge is something that we created, but you could create anything you wanted. You can make bronze, silver, gold. You can have a star community member one or something like that. There's a lot of different interesting ways that you can do that. And I see somebody asked, do accolades replace upvotes? Accolades replace the instructor badge in Classic. The upvotes are replaced by the emoji system. So the reactions in this are what figure into the point system in the way that the upvotes did the like and love in Classic. Are there any questions other questions I might have missed, Tyler, that I should address? Or if anybody has any that they want to jump in with now, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm seeing a few questions, Brian. Martha's question about group functionality was tied to how Yellowdig supports the notion of small group, peer engagement, feedback. Martha, if you want to add more context on exactly how you're using group functionality or peer reviewing, et cetera, feel free. But there's actually a few ways, one of which Brian is showing now, that we would recommend that you facilitate that group work. So Brian, why don't you speak to that, and then I can seed you in another question or two.
Yeah, so the group functionality in Yellowdig currently is basically you can enable groups and set a certain number of groups that will be in your community. And what that means is that as students launch into the group, or if they're already there and you enable them, they'll be randomly assigned to that number of groups. round robin style. And then every post that a student makes will be tagged with their group number, essentially. And you can organize them afterwards if you want to reassign students. There is this public visibility tag here, and what that means is if you leave it so that posts are publicly visible, students will be able to see everything that everybody posts, just that their post will be tagged with their group number. And so if they're part of a group, their group members would be able to just click on that group number and sort the or filter the feed by only that group. With group visibility turned off, basically students experience that community as if they're the only people in it. So if you had a community with 100 students and you had 5 groups, there would be 20 students per group, and they would only know that there were 20 students in that community. So that's a good way to possibly fragment really large groups or really large classes into smaller groups. And I should say, the admin experience, regardless of whether the public visibility is on or off, is that any post an admin makes will go to every group, and any comment that they make on those posts would also go to the entire group. If they wanted to talk to individual students, they sort of comment on those group posts. But it makes it really easy to admin a much larger experience because the admins can see everything regardless of whether groups are enabled or not. So that's one way that you can definitely enable group work. And I'm guessing the other one that Tyler was going to jump to is that we do have a direct messaging feature, which is currently sort of a beta feature. But you can basically do, oh, that's me, so I can't direct message myself. You can go in and hover on any avatar and direct message them. And there you'll be able to do, one-to-many conversations. So if you wanted to do, groups, you would just have them also possibly direct message each other. That would be another way to do it. So one other thing I guess that's worth mentioning about those avatars is you see this green outline. That's an indication that this person is currently online, and that's me in this case. But if students had that green ring, I would know that they'd be online. I could have sort of a synchronous opportunity to engage with them via that direct messaging feature. Anything you wanted to add to that, Tyler?
No, other than that, the Engage platform, given its its support of informal Q&A amongst students or informal community building, students can, if you want them to, have the ability to build their own communities to facilitate group conversation that might involve things happening in class, but may also involve things that are important to them outside of class, just like you would see in a study group, in the library or anywhere on campus. So I want to highlight that. There was great questions coming in through the Q&A as well as in the chat. There's a question here. Let me see. I just scrolled past it. So somebody has asked about the ability for Yellowdig to either support like calling people from within the platform or the notion of synchronous video. Maybe if you want to go to direct messaging and we can speak through that. And this was a question from Ashley. I think it's a great question. It sounds like you have some experience using other platforms that may support those things. Given our focus on accessibility, those are not elements that we've added to the platform right away, but as we've recognized the need for synchronous opportunities within the asynchronous environment, that need, I think, is all the more real in light of this new normal that we're all in. We are quickly exploring integrations with industry standards for some of those things that you mentioned. Could be Zoom, could be a Skype or something of that nature. But that being said, Brian did mention presence. So you do see users who were online, they show up as green, and now I'll let him speak through direct messaging. This is a feature that I think may satisfy some of what you might use that calling feature for, Ashley, especially if your learners are distributed, because calling them all at the same time of day might be very difficult. And that's one of the things that we see instructors using this chat feature for.
Yeah, I mean, the direct messaging feature is a really, fairly sort of standard, you can do one-to-one conversations in terms of reaching out to individual students. The way that this works basically is it's not specific to a individual community. Essentially, if students or instructors share a community together, they will be able to direct message one another within our platform. And that basically means that in any network, in any space that they occupy, if they have the ability to interact within a community, they'll have the ability to also direct message each other. And so, one thing that definitely enables is, all kinds of potential interactions outside of the individual community space. One of the other things that we're hopeful that people will use it for is reaching out to individual students by through our data displays and portals, which are showing sort of students that may not be participating as much or may not be interacting directly with very many other students or with the instructional team. We have a couple of features that are coming up very shortly that are going to really surface a lot of the sort of interconnectedness of these networks and allow you to identify and reach out to individual people that might be kind of falling off. So I don't know if I hit on everything you wanted me to say, Tyler, about the feature, but this definitely allows us to embed those direct outreach opportunities all throughout the platform. And that's something we're going to increasingly do as this feature really, get some legs.
Yeah, I think all that I would add, we're having conversations with universities supporting all kinds of learners. Yellowdig is used. I would argue almost the majority, or at least 50% of that use is in the adult learning space, MBA, graduate students, certificate education. We work with some of the largest universities that support adult learning populations. And while synchronous is what we're all leaning on, absent of campus, for so many reasons, adult learners especially, or learners that are distributed across a wide geography, it makes synchronous engagement challenging because the time that we all may want to get together may not work for one or a few students, and suddenly they're isolated and they have a different experience as a result of that. The time that may work for the instructor to lead their office hours may be the time that my child is to be fed, and I'm unavailable to do that. And we're seeing, we all see this in our work lives. It's tougher to do this at the same time that works for everyone. So I'd encourage everyone who is leaning on synchronous engagement in any shape or form to really think critically about how you can wrap what you're doing synchronously with an asynchronous experience that will allow the learner at the time that they have the question to ask the question. Asynchronous engagement we find is far more student-centered because the student can ask the questions that they want when they want. They can engage with the topics that they want when they want. And that control is really, really important in this new environment that everyone's finding themselves in.
Yeah, and just to kind of, all right, I already clicked on that. Just to kind of give everybody a little bit of a orientation about, how these communities interrelate to each other. I entered Yellowdig through that course community, and here that is within my, within my community list of communities that are available to me. But once I become a member of an individual community, I'm able to jump around in between those. And so, there's an ability once you're in Yellowdig to sort of mesh into and find all different kinds of things that might interest you, and then decide to join them either outside of class or in class. And there are sort of privacy restrictions within your organization to make sure that students can't get into a class that you don't want them into, but then to allow other things to be opened up. And one of those ways is by making communities discoverable. So any community that's created can be made discoverable so that people within your organization are able to find it and join it, or it can be hidden from these lists so that nobody would be able to find it, or there's kind of a hybrid where people can find these communities and sort of knock to enter, and they have to get permission to get in. So, there's a lot of opportunities here to sort of blend these experiences together.
Brian, if I could direct you to the My Communities page, there was a question from Pamela about the notion of like expiration dates on these communities. Typically in a Canvas discussion or a Blackboard discussion, as we all know, when the course ends, the students lose access to that. Can you maybe speak to what we've done a little bit differently to allow for engagement after the course ends and in a bunch of ways?
Yeah, so we do allow sort of an end date for the point system for courses so that, if you're accumulating a grade, it would stop. But those communities can continue to be posted to as students would want to ongoing, as long as they have access to that course and can jump in. They can choose to continue to do that. Which is one good way to possibly continue on those communities. We also have some different sorting capabilities that we've enlisted here so that if a community hasn't been accessed by you in a while, it will sort of fall down. Now this drop down versus classic is only showing sort of the top set of your communities that have been active. So there are some things that we've done just in sorting and showing things to you that are most relevant. But there is a lot of ability to sort of continue on some of these conversations if you want them to. You can make them read only as well, so there's some optionality to not allow that. But yeah, there's kind of a lot of choices as far as what you would want to allow to happen in those communities.
Thanks, Brian. I'm just responding to a few one-off questions here. Why don't you continue forward? I'll go dark again, and then I'll pop my head back up if I need to.
And just because I want to make sure that I don't miss out on this, I do want to show some of the data capabilities of the platform and talk a little bit about some of the things that you'll see in Yellowdig that you definitely won't see in other tools. So we have this community health area, and within it, there's a high-level summary that shows you your posts and comments and how many posts and comments and things like that per follower. So you'll get a sense of how much each of your students has been doing inside of your community. One of the things that we surface that we think is our North Star metric that's super important is the conversation ratio. And this is really just the ratio of comments to posts. But we calculate it and we surface it because if you think about a standard discussion forum, which is usually like one post and 2 comments, the conversation ratio is essentially 2 comments per post at best. At Yellowdig, what we've seen in the data we've analyzed, we're trying to push that metric up above at least 7 or 8. And what we see is that the relationship between the conversation ratio and almost all the other metrics is that as the conversation ratio goes up and students are participating in more back and forth conversation, so too do all the other metrics go up, including correlations with student grades for the course and the basic quality of the conversation as a lot of instructors talk to us about it. So essentially, if you want to have a discussion, you should have a high conversation ratio. There should be a lot of back and forth conversation. And that conversation ratio is then related to just about all other positive outcomes. So if I were to suggest one thing, you should try to get this number up pretty high as you're trying to use Yellowdig. Underneath that is an activity log, which will show you sort of these metrics by week. if you try something different for 1 week or something and you want to see how that turned out, you'll be able to get a quick sense of, how much students were engaging with a specific thing, or with, some kind of project you may have asked them to do. The health check area, I think, is really unique and really important. So one of the first things that we've done is sort of surfaced our best practices based on all of the data we've collected and partnerships that we've run into. And these best practices, we would suggest that you check all of them green. You don't have to, but it allows you to go in, change the settings if you want to be able to do that. And we think that if you do use all of these best practices, which I'll talk about a little bit more in sort of the last 15 minutes, but if you're checking those off, we think that your community health scores are going to be higher, and we definitely see that in our data. So these community health scores that we've created here are essentially percentiles, and it's just the average percentile of the variables beneath it. But we have 3 score areas that we talk about. The sharing score is all about sort of producing content, creating posts, creating comments, sharing multimedia items and links. But basically this is producing, sharing, posting. And most discussion assignments require this, right? So it's pretty easy to drive a pretty high sharing score if you just tell people they have to do these things, right? What we think is unique about Yellowdig is all of the other behaviors that students will participate in if the community is healthy and is meaningful to them. And those things are really sort of listening to each other. So, looking at posts, viewing a lot of posts, really clicking a lot of the hyperlinks and getting that conversation ratio up, right? If you're commenting back and forth with other students, you have to kind of be listening to them, or else it's not really a conversation. So, we recommend getting these listening scores up and interacting scores. So this is how many times students are connecting with one another, actually talking with one another. The number of posts that, have comments on them, right? One thing that happens in a lot of Blackboard or Canvas discussions is everybody waits until the end of the week, and then there's a whole bunch of posts that are created that nobody ever responds to. That's something that in Yellowdig we don't want. We want everybody, commenting on and talking about those posts. But these variables show Yellowdig, your Yellowdig community against global Yellowdig scores, or within your own network, you'll be able to compare your community to other communities in your network. And that really gives you a sort of clear benchmark about how your communities are doing relative to others. And I think one thing that we found is that, people might see some of the strengths, or they think things are going pretty well, but it turns out that, they could be getting a lot more out of their students if they tried some different things. And then so, if they try those things sort of semester over semester, they can actually see the impacts of those decisions. Or even week to week, right? You try something new 1 week, and you can sort of quickly tell how that's working out for you. And there are, of course, metrics by students, so I can come in and track sort of individual student engagement. And one thing about those topic tags also is that you can, if you use them, and especially if you require them, as students are using those topics, you'll be able to see what they're talking about the most, what's grabbing their attention. Get a feel for, if there are specific topics that maybe you need to cover more, or maybe you can use in your future course. So here you see students and what topics they're talking about. So maybe Sarah's student is actually a marketing executive, and she's in an MBA class. And she's really, an expert in marketing. So she's actually talking a lot in her community about marketing. Maybe you make her, a guest lecturer about some topic in the future, part of your class, or maybe you call on her expertise, in some facet there. Or maybe alternatively, she's really confused about marketing and has a lot of questions. You'd be able to sort of identify by looking at her activity, what her story really is, and maybe what you can do as an instructor to improve that. Okay, so I think we have about 10 minutes or 12 minutes, I guess. I want to pause and see if there are any questions. And if not, I did want to jump into just one thing about sort of how we envision the world at Yellowdig, and talk a little bit about pedagogy and some of our recommendations. So are
Brian,
there
maybe
any questions?
yeah, I think there's one question left that has not been touched on in any way, and I know a lot of people are thinking about it. There's a good chance that we're going to have students that are going to be abroad, who normally would be on campus, but are maybe in places like China, where there may be concerns about access to the platform. We actually have already worked with Fort Hays State University, who has a campus in China, to build communities through Yellowdig. Now, in that case, they are hosting an instance of Blackboard in China that Yellowdig is used within. But we do have many cases where the student might be using edX, and edX is hosted here in the US, but they're accessing the platform from, say, Taiwan or China or any number of places. So rest assured, we would want to do some testing. It's not customized by languages to the extent that you might want for a fully Chinese community, but rest assured that anyone who maybe is not able to access campus, that's maybe abroad, they can use Yellowdig seamlessly. We've seen very few issues with that. And the only other question is in regards to licensing. And why don't we save that for after your next bit of slides, Brian?
Yeah, no problem. Great. So I need to minimize this, get rid of it. Okay. Here we go. So I want to talk a little bit about the Yellowdig point system, because I do think that that's one of the hallmarks of the platform, and I really haven't talked about it at all. But just to give you an idea, the way that our point system was designed was, again, we think that it's really important that you have a single community, right? Where all the action is happening, it draws students back in. There's a lot of different things going on, so people can pull different value from different aspects of that community. But Yellowdig was designed, and the point system was designed as a single semester long assignment with sort of no ending of good conversations, right? So one of the things, and I'll talk about this in just a second, that we think is really sort of a problem in a lot of standard discussion forums is the concept of deadlining and how that changes student behavior for the worse, and why we want our point system to sort of fight that, those patterns. But we think of the points in Yellowdig for posting and commenting, these top two categories where you sort of set a word count, as being entirely for participation purposes. This gets all of the students into the Yellowdig community, interacting with each other, posting content, right? And we think that the social points, and we've observed from our data that the social points really reward articulate, thoughtful posts, and posts that are sort of starting conversations that are made early in the week. So those social points are for getting comments from another user, for getting reactions from another user, or getting accolades from the instructor. There's a couple of things about these that you'll notice. First of all, a lot of them are directed from one student to another, and that really encourages students to think about the other students as the audience. And they realize that as they're posting, if other students respond to those posts and they actually get good conversations going, they'll actually earn more points and probably replace a little bit of the work they would otherwise have to do through posts and comments. That really encourages them to write really good things. But the other thing is, you can't get those points unless you actually have content up on the board for other people to respond to. So in that community, it encourages students to come in, start good conversations, and get those things going. And that gets the ball rolling, really gets the community being a worthwhile place to be. And so this is really the way that the Yellowdig point system was designed, what it was designed to do. And I want to show a couple of graphics really quick that I think fully illustrate the difference. So everybody's probably familiar with the standard discussion forum um, uh, pedagogy, but basically, in most cases, professors will post something that requires students to respond, a prompt, an assignment of some sort, and typically it's something like make a post and then comment on a couple of other people's posts. There are, of course, slight variations, but that's how a lot of people have used discussion forums in the past. And one thing that you see is typically there's a go-getter, a couple of go-getter students come in early in the week, they do their post, they have to come back later in the week in order to be able to actually have a conversation with the rest of the class. And that pattern actually encourages them to increasingly procrastinate because they kind of discover like there's no point in coming in early in the week and trying to get something started because there's nobody else there. There's nobody else that seems to be as excited as I am. So that's one bad thing about sort of a cold start for every single conversation. The other really interesting thing about this paradigm, and one of the reasons that we think it's really important to break it down, is the experience that it has for this procrastinating student and really for the class as a whole. So unlike any other assignment, procrastination is really terrible for a discussion, right? If all of the students are coming in right before the deadline, there's no time to have back and forth conversations. So you get a huge spike in just posts that are flying around that really aren't being talked back and forth about. And then we have these long dead periods where nothing is really happening. And so the idea that you can just wait until the deadline to post really damages peer-to-peer conversations in a way that it doesn't impact any other types of assignments, right? If I want to procrastinate and I'm this student, maybe it harms my learning or maybe it harms my grade, but it's only harming me. If I procrastinate though, for a discussion, I'm sort of harming the experience for every other student. One other thing that's interesting here is this break that you see, right? So this student's experience is coming into a community where they post, nobody ever responds to them, and any comment that they're putting onto a post is literally posting, it's posting at that student, but that student has no incentive to come back in and actually respond to this student or continue that conversation. So in reality, we're isolating these procrastinating students from having conversations with anybody. And in terms of retention, in terms of encouraging those students to continue in the course, in terms of getting students that probably on average are your less well-prepared students, from actually talking to those students that are really excited, that are prepared, right? We're isolating the students that most need to interact from all of the rest of the class, which is sort of, obviously bad. And so one thing that Yellowdig is trying to do is create a vision that looks more like this. And, the idea here is certainly that we allow conversations to run in parallel. There's no concept. Students get the option to choose what they want to talk about. There's no concept that they have to come in and talk about a specific topic in order to earn their participation for the week. And what that does is allows conversations to, first of all, die out if they're dead, right? This conversation gets halfway through the first week, it's not that interesting. Somebody else posts a more interesting conversation and shifts it, and this conversation can kind of die off if everything's been said. The other thing it allows is conversations to continue across multiple weeks if they continue to be relevant. One other thing about the Yellowdig model that I think is vitally important is, in a standard discussion framework where students are responding to the professor, it's their job to look smart and to look like they know exactly what they're talking about. So they might do a lot of research on their post. They might be really thoughtful to create that post, but they're never asking questions, and they're never getting those questions answered. And if you think about learning, that's vitally important, right? So one thing that we think should happen in a Yellowdig community is students should be asking questions and getting points for asking questions that get good conversations started, right? So if they ask a question and the rest of the class has the same question, they can start a really good conversation that sort of fills gaps in your lectures or fills gaps in other sort of learning materials. Maybe that gives you the opportunity to come in and sort of also sort of answer that question for them. We've definitely seen people use Yellowdig for basically office hours, where the professor has said, you know, I want to invite you to ask whatever questions you have, and I'll actually wait 24 hours to answer it, so the rest of the class, you know, has an opportunity to do so. But students actually get faster responses to their questions that way, and the students get the benefits of reviewing information, blending information together. You definitely see all of these different student groups actually, you know, blending together and interacting a lot more. A lot of the sort of network graphs and metrics that we're presenting are all about getting these students connected, really interconnected, in ways that sort of draw everybody into that community and get everybody seeing the value of being there. And once you get that ball rolling, really you see that the students don't need the points. They come because there's value in it. And a lot of the, you know, Yellowdig communities that that we've observed that are really using our best practices, the students are getting on average, you know, 125 to 150% of the course goal. These students are really coming in there and participating because they see the value in it. So I see I'm about out to my time. I definitely want to leave time to answer questions, and I can hang out afterwards. But I want to just jump really quick to talking about our offer. I know for a number of you probably found this webinar through that offer, but we definitely want you to sign up and reserve a spot for either summer if you still haven't started, or starting very soon, or definitely for the fall. The idea here is that we want everybody to be able to take advantage of Yellowdig, sort of regardless of the current licensing situations and sort of uncertainty about how things are going in the fall. And we think Yellowdig is a great tool, whether you end up being face-to-face or online. It will fit seamlessly into your classes. So we definitely encourage you to sort of take advantage of this and you know, definitely try it out.
Yeah, Brian, before we wrap, all that I'd add, you know, the offer will get you up and running very, very quickly. You have access to that community of instructors that are already using Yellowdig that Brian, I believe, mentioned earlier in the discussion. Really, the only requirement is that we get you into that course and that we get you into your learning management system. And we have plenty of time to do that between now and the fall. For anyone that might see interest beyond that offer, that's where I would encourage you to reach out either through the promotional offer or directly through our website. There's a demo request form. Feel free to let us know. We are building custom proposals for every new partner in light of this new you know, reality that we're in. So I'm not going to dive deeply into licensing on this call, but we have a number of options that we're providing on any range of needs, from users to timelines, et cetera. And I would be happy to facilitate any of those conversations. I'm going to go ahead and just put my email address in the chat for anyone that has specific questions on that. Please do feel free to reach out to me.